All right, let's dive into something that sounds super complicated but is actually one of the most useful ways to look at your life. It's called game theory. And don't worry, we're not going to get bogged down in the math. Just think of it as a new pair of glasses, one that lets you see the invisible rules that guide pretty much everything, from your job to your relationships.
Now that's a pretty bold statement, right? But when we say game, we're not talking about playing around or being manipulative. We're talking about a game in the mathematical sense, which is just any situation where what happens to you depends not just on what you do, but on what other people do. And when you stop and think about it, that's basically everything.
So let's start where most of us start. We go through life with this fundamental belief that people, for the most part, are trying to be good, that our actions are based on morals, on kindness, on a basic sense of what's fair. And that's a really nice way to see the world, but it's just not the full picture.
I mean, we've all been here, haven't we? You go into a situation, a team project, a new friendship, whatever, and you're operating by the rules on the left. You share, you play fair, you're upfront and honest. And then, reality hits. The cooperation doesn't come back, the fairness gets ignored, and sometimes being honest actually gets you burned. It is just so incredibly frustrating.
And that leaves you asking this one really painful question. Why? Why did my good intentions completely backfire? Why did trying to be the good guy lead to such a bad outcome for me? You feel like you did everything right, but it all still went wrong. And that is the mystery we're going to solve today.
And here it is. Here's the answer that game theory gives us, and it is a total game changer, literally. The problem so often isn't the people. It's the game they are all being forced to play. We're about to pull back the curtain and look at the hidden rules that make totally rational people create these awful, irrational results.
The most famous example of this whole idea is the prisoner's dilemma. It's just a simple thought experiment, but man, it reveals a pretty terrifying truth about how we interact. It shows how two people, both acting completely logically to protect themselves, can wind up in a way worse situation than if they'd just been able to trust each other.
Okay, let's walk through this. Just put yourself in this situation. Look at the board. Let's say the other guy, prisoner B, stays silent. You could also stay silent, and you both get 1 year. Not bad. Or you could betray him and walk free. Well, walking free is definitely better. Okay, now let's say prisoner B betrays you. You could stay silent and get nailed with 10 years, or you could betray him too and you both get 5. Well, 5 years is a whole lot better than 10. So you see what's happening? No matter what the other guy does, your safest individual move is always to betray.
And this is the absolute core of it. The real tragedy here isn't that people are naturally backstabbers. No, the tragedy is that the game itself is structured to make betrayal the most logical, self-protective choice. The rules of the game are designed to just chew up and spit out trust, even if both people really wanted to cooperate.
And this isn't some abstract idea. This exact dilemma plays out everywhere. Think about your workplace. That person who hoards information, maybe they're not just a jerk. Maybe they're playing a game where being transparent has gotten them punished in the past. It's a perfectly rational move in a badly designed game. Same with dating, same with politics.
This is the moment where the light bulb goes on. Everything shifts. You stop looking at conflicts as a simple battle of who's right and who's wrong, or who's good and who's evil. Instead, you start seeing the system, the structure, the rules and the payoffs. And you start asking a much, much more powerful question. What game are we actually playing here?
And once you start asking that question, you start to see the world in a completely different way. It's like you can suddenly see the code running behind the screen. You start to decode all this human behavior that used to just seem random or mean or irrational. You're reading the world's invisible rules. But here's a twist. What happens when the game isn't a one-time thing? What happens when you have to see these people again tomorrow and the day after that? Well, that changes everything. In what we call repeated games, your reputation is your most valuable asset. All of a sudden, cooperating isn't just the nice thing to do, it's the smartest long-term play. Trust stops being this vague, fluffy feeling and becomes what it really is, a core strategy.
But even in these long-term games, sometimes we get stuck. There's a name for this, a Nash equilibrium. And you can forget the math behind it. Just think of it as that feeling of being caught in a strategic trap. It's any situation where everybody is making the best possible move for them, given what everyone else is doing, but the result for the group is just awful, and nobody can break out of the cycle on their own.
And man, these traps are all over the place. That toxic job where everyone complains all day, but nobody leaves because it feels too risky. That political gridlock where everybody knows the whole system is broken, but any politician who tries to be the reasonable one gets crushed.
You can't just will your way out of these situations. You're stuck in a bad game.
Okay, so this brings us to the final part, and honestly, the most empowering part of all this. If you can't always win the game you've been dropped into, what do? Well, you stop being just a player, and you become a designer. You move from being a pawn on the board to choosing which board you're even willing to play on.
You start to see that true power, real strategy, isn't about being the most aggressive player or just dominating your opponent. It's about being the architect. It's about shaping the rules, shaping the environment, to make the outcomes you want the most attractive option for everyone involved. You don't force people's hands. You change the incentives of the game itself.
So how do you actually do this? Well, you basically engineer a better reality. You want your team at work to be honest? You have to create a space where admitting a mistake doesn't get you fired. You want a loyal partner? You build a relationship so good that the cost of betrayal, losing all that trust, that shared future, is just impossibly high. It's all about changing the payoffs.
And this might be one of the most profound lessons in all of game theory. Some games are rigged from the start. They are unwinnable. They are designed to exploit you. And in those situations, the single smartest, most strategic move you can make is to just refuse to play. Walking away isn't giving up. It's a powerful, conscious, strategic choice. When you really truly internalize all of this, your whole self-perception can change. You stop judging yourself and other people in these simple terms of good or bad. You realize that a lot of your past failures weren't because you had some deep character flaw. You were just playing a cooperative strategy in a cutthroat game. You weren't a bad person, you were just in a bad game. And that brings this incredible sense of clarity.
So here it is, the ultimate takeaway. Life isn't always about being the best player. Most people are just scrambling, trying to win inside games that they were thrown into and never even chose to play. The real journey, the hero's journey, is learning to take a step back and choose the game first. That's how you win what actually matters.